Looking for somebody I can call. Looking for the only one I can.
Hi, and welcome to On Air with B&B.
I'm Brittany.
And I'm Bethany, and we are two mental health therapists with real talk and mental health tips that matter. Today, we are going to be talking about how to help kids adjust to divorce or separation because, one, it's just a very popular, common thing that is happening. It has always been happening, but we're seeing a lot more of it recently with all the stress of society and the economy and all of the things. Parents are having even a harder time, just juggling everything, including their marriages, and sometimes, coming to the conclusion that it's time to maybe separate or divorce. And we're seeing a lot more kids having to deal with this. And, I get like the question of, how do I talk to my kid about this? How do we co-parent? How do, just all of the things. So we thought with the recent influx that this would be a good time to maybe shed light on this topic. So, I just want to clarify before we get started, we're not giving any legal advice. We're not giving any tips on, like how to take your other half down, or get custody or anything like that. If you guys need help with that, then, there's guardian ad litem, social investigators. It all goes through the court. And realistically, your therapist really stays out of that stuff. Like, we have a lot of clients who will come and say, well, you're going to testify in court, right? And yes, that can happen. But realistically, at the end of the day, like, our main goal is for the kids to adjust as well as they can to the big, huge transition, because it's such a big transition for them, even if they're still seeing both of their parents regularly. Just the fact of having two homes is really tough, and having two, sets of things, two different sets of rules, and just the confusion. Like, some kids know it's coming. Some kids are completely blindsided, because they didn't even realize their parents were having issues.
Right. I think it could look very different. It's very situational based. But I think what's really, really important, and we just created a video, video before this, regarding on how to get your kids to listen. We highlighted different communication tactics or skills, if you will, that could be really helpful in fostering that communication. So I definitely recommend that. But specifically for this video, how kids experience divorce could be really detrimental to their mental and emotional well-being or their capacity. And it can show up in different ways, not just with your interpersonal relationship with your child or your children or your, ex-partners or your ex-spouse's relationship, but it can also look different within their own friendships, within their own relationships. You may also notice maybe even depression-like symptoms, which could be something along the lines of things that used to bring them, joy, or things that they enjoyed, whether that be dancing or sports or music, or just playing outside with their friends. If you notice any of these things that, that they're engaging in or even withdrawing in, I think, my biggest suggestion, would just be reaching out to a clinical mental health provider in your area, whether that be a mental health therapist, a psychologist, or even a psychiatrist for further assessments and evaluations if you're concerned due to the potential severity of the symptoms that you're witnessing with your child or your children. But again, like Bethany stated, just to reiterate, none of this is legal advice. They're all everything is just for educational purposes, and just, our advice and our suggestions.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing that I focus on in therapy with kids whose parents recently got separated or divorced is just how important it is to verbalize whatever it is they're feeling. And there's, depending on the kid, depending on the situations, there could be several different things that they're feeling. They could be angry, they could be sad, they could be confused, they could be happy. Maybe they were, they're seeing their parents like really just not getting along for a really long time, and they're like, oh, relieved, like now at least when we spend time with our parents, they'll be paying attention to us and in a good mood instead of arguing with each other. You just never know. But going again back to, what are you feeling? Do you even know what you're feeling? Let's talk about what you're feeling. Going through the grieving process, I kind of like to describe it to my clients as like grief sometimes. Like because you are losing something.
Yeah.
And going through those stages of grief of what they thought their family looked like, and maybe redefining what their family looks like. Like, I love that. This is so stupid, but like Bruce Willis and Demi Moore, were able to get divorced and then have separate new spouses and still vacation together and do things together. And I have a good friend whose parents, I call her parents Bruce and Demi, because they do that. It didn't happen right away.
Right.
At first there was anger and frustration and resentment, but then over the years they came back together as a family, and they all go on cruises together now, and they're all at the kids' birthdays and not faking it.
Right.
So sometimes it's just like redefining what the family looks like.
Yeah, I think that's important too.
Yeah.
And even more so, just, reassuring parents that like, even when the divorce or the separation might be necessary for you, being really consistent in your narrative to your child or your children that this has nothing to do with them, I think is important as well. I think that's really important to just, present as friends, basically, just like, keeping the arguments or the disagreements between the two parents very quiet, and we don't talk negatively or really about the other parent to the child. We always recommend that as well. I think that's really important. But children do experience divorce differently. I do want to kind of clinically underscore that divorce or separation for children or even adults, they can meet the symptom markers for adjustment disorder according to the DSM-5 TR. And so that's really important. So for any of you guys thinking of this, yes, it could be quite serious, and it could be really, emotionally harming to the child if we don't promote a positive transition as much as possible.
It
is hard.
Let's be honest. If people are getting separated or divorced,
it's not fun.
There's going to be a lot of feelings, and there's going to be a lot of emotions. And I don't think anyone is actually trying to hurt their kids in the process of how they're responding to it. But they're human, you're human too. And so you're going through it too. And it may have been something that you didn't want or the other person didn't want. And so there's, a lot of feelings and whatnot. Hence the reason, again, I think, like you said, looking into therapy for your child is really important. But also we recommend often that parents go to counseling together for co-parenting therapy.
Yes.
So yes, you've already made the decision that this isn't working. We don't want to do this anymore. So it's not couples therapy, but it's co-parenting therapy, so that you guys can get to a place where you can co-parent, and be cordial, so that it affects the child less. I mean, it's everything, again, is still going to affect the child, but the more that you keep things, I love the word consistent, but with routines and discipline and expectations and all of that, the better they're going to adjust to such a big transition.
Correct. Absolutely. I think it's important to help promote that transition alongside with your child's own therapist, or maybe you and your future co-parent getting into therapy together or individually as well. I think that will be really important too. But even more so, just, other support systems or other support tools, such as books, could be really,
I was
really
going to bring
helpful.
up books too. I actually just ordered a couple. What's the one that you just got, called Mom and Dad Are Splitting?
Mom and Dad Are Splitting. Yeah, that's for younger children and adolescents. Like elementary school is pretty much when it's like what it's catered
Kids do, younger kids especially, relate better to stories that are written about other kids,
people.
basically, like going through the same
Yeah.
thing than us just sitting down and kind of trying to explain it to them,
Correct.
because it's more interesting. And so we do a lot of, I guess, psychoeducation through picture, not picture books. They have words, but
Yeah.
they're
Different types of books.
geared more towards the younger kiddos.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also too, not just with like the books, but also there's a lot of free resources on YouTube as well. Now, I always recommend my parents like watch the video first, one way through, because you never really know, especially on any like social media platform these days, even on like kids' YouTubes, like there's
Yeah.
still things that pop up. So I do want to preface with that. Just make sure that you are watching it through first. But there's a lot of free resources on YouTube about, you know, stories or social stories, if you will, regarding, you know, parents separating or even getting a divorce. I also want to encourage our viewers to like look in your surrounding areas. I know at our practice, like we have like social skills group, and then we also have like an empowerment group. And you know, sometimes in the empowerment group, I know we kind of advocate about, you know, how to handle hard or stressful situations. And that's not limiting or like not inclusive of divorce and separation. It very much is inclusive of that. And so teaching our children how to be empowered through hard times or hard changes as well, I think is going to be really critical. So looking in your surrounding area to see if there's any groups that can also support your children is something that I would also
Yeah, because they
recommend.
definitely need reassurance,
Yeah.
like more reassurance than I would typically suggest during
they
this
do a lot
time.
of blame,
Like,
self-blame.
even if they're not asking, like, even if everything seems
Seems
fine,
fine.
because a lot of kids, like, you know, some kids act out, some kids show they're sad, some kids seem completely fine, and you're like, wow, this is really isn't affecting them, but it is, and you just don't know.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes just saying, hey, like, I know things are different, and this
Yeah.
isn't how we thought our family or our life was going to look or be, but everything's going to be just fine. And, you know, and just bringing it up even if they're not asking, just
Yeah.
giving them that reassurance.
And I think even more so, like, yes, saying that everything's going to be fine, but, you know, also addressing the elephant in the room. Like, yes, things are going to be different, but different can be great. Right. And highlighting like the positive things, like as someone who is like, you know, her like my parents are divorced, and my parents divorced when I was like 16, 15, or separated when I was 15. And, you know, I remember having like a lot of feelings and emotions, but at least the one thing that like helped me too is just like my parents didn't really make me choose. My parents were really supportive of like, you are going to go see your parents next weekend. And like, really, you know, I didn't know as a child, like my parents were like bickering in the background, right? Like they kind of kept that to themselves, but at least they never spoke negatively about each other. I think one thing too is like always presenting that your child or your children's like other parent, your ex essentially, is your friend in some capacity, right? I think that also helps relieve this like stressful factor on your children as well, from like having to pick, right, or having to choose sides. I know that happens quite frequently or quite often as well. I know a lot of children in a divorce or separation scenario start caring a lot about the parents and then trying to become the parent rather than just being the child. So these are things that we do have to kind of like recognize clinically or as a parent, just like look for, just to be mindful, because like Bethany said, like just because a child is acting normal doesn't mean that it's not impacting them. They're probably just a really good like masker.
Yeah, and I also think, just like thinking back while you're speaking about how, like you said, like my parents never made me choose. Um, uh, Also, like there's these, you know, parenting plans out there now where, you know, dad gets you Monday, Tuesday, mom gets you Wednesday, Thursday, and then they switch Thursday,
weekends.
Friday, or they do week on, week off, or every other weekend. There's all different kinds. However, I've had a lot of kids in my office say to me, oh, it's mom's weekend or it's dad's weekend, and I don't want to go because not because they don't want to see the other parent, but like maybe there's something going on at the other house that weekend that they want to do, or they only have play dates with certain friends at the other house, or they just, that was the original house they lived in and they like that room better. So they like to sleep there. So they like to go see the other parent, but they don't necessarily like to sleep in the other house. And I think sometimes, it's hard for us as parents not to get like our feelings hurt if they don't want to. You look at it as like they don't want to spend time with me or they don't want to come to my house, but it's not really even about that.
Right.
It's really about them not wanting like their consistency to be, or their life to be much different. And so sometimes we have to put like our feelings aside as adults and say, hey, I really want to spend time with you, and I have a room for you at my house and I have all these things, but if you don't want to come this weekend, that's okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe I can come, is there another way I could see you if you don't want to come for the whole weekend? Like, can I come pick you up and take you to lunch? Can I, is there something else? That's just something that I just thought of, thinking of a client who recently, her dad, her parents are getting separated, divorced, whatever. I don't even really know, to be honest, but they're not together. And her dad wanted to spend time with her and he wanted to take her to shopping. And it was Sunday and she didn't feel like it. She wanted to stay in her pajamas and stay home. And, just, I think sometimes like saying, okay, like, let's do that instead. Like, even though I had this idea. Or can we do that instead? Because again, like if you wanted to stay home on a Sunday in your pajamas and then you had to go out and you didn't want to, even though it would have nothing to do with the other person, like, it could create a lot of feelings and a lot of like hurt feelings.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I like that. It's kind of like basically just as the parent, just saying like, hey, if there's like one of my weekends where you want to do something, just kind of like talk to me about it and let's like kind of create like a compromise almost.
Yeah.
No, I like that, because you're also fostering like, again, like a healthy relationship with your child, because your child will always be your child, but your child will not always be a child.
Right. And they have their own wants and needs too, and they're allowed to change their minds and they're allowed to not feel in the mood to do certain things or like I love my bed. I hate when I have to go. I don't hate it because I love the trip, but I don't sleep well in hotels. Like the sheets just, the pillows, whatever. And you know what? It's okay for a kid to be like, I really just like my bed at this one parent's house. And so it's not that I don't want to come to your house. I just don't want to sleep there. I've had that a lot, and that's okay. And so just thinking of those things and not maybe taking it so personal, like they like the other parent better, they don't, love me, or it's not, they are still their own people.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think communication and compromise is very helpful for the children, because at the end of the day, like just because you got to leave that relationship with your ex doesn't mean that your children are.
Yeah, they didn't get a say in this.
Yeah. So I think it is important because you are like uprooting and changing so much. I know we kind of highlighted some examples of support for like the younger kiddos, but for middle school into high school age, I really would recommend some type of a journal as well. I think that could be really helpful, kind of like a source where they can like write down all of their thoughts and feelings if they don't feel comfortable like expressing it verbally to a parent. I think that would be a good first step. But I'm saying all of that with the understanding of respecting the child's autonomy and their privacy. I think that's really important too. Reason being is because if you kind of stumble upon it and you read something again that maybe like upsets you, right? And you take it personally or hold it over.
And then you say something to them.
Right. Then that can be really messy, for like a lack of better terms. I think not only messy, but that can really negatively impact your, relationship again with your child as far as like the trust, right? Remember that the purpose of a journal is not for anyone else to read it. It's the opportunity for that individual who's writing to be authentic and genuine with no repercussions or consequences. They're allowed to just kind of be free. It is meant to be like a support tool, right? Where they can just write and like let it all out, right? Without the worry or the concern of hurting someone that they love the most, which is typically the parents. This is not an easy situation, nor is it like the end all be all, like fixing. This is a journey, and it does take time to really overcome it. So separation or divorce is very comparable to grieving, because you're kind of grieving life as you once known it for so many years, right? Especially as like a child, typically it's like that is what they've known for such a short or long period of time regarding like when this is occurring, but I think it is important to kind of keep that in mind, to be as supportive as you can for your children or for your child. There's no perfect way to go through a divorce.
No, there really isn't. And again, it's different for everyone. And kids, whether, they're young or they're older, they're going to have different feelings. Like I was just thinking when you were saying, like, just for a short period of time, like the younger, like, kids who maybe their parents got divorced when they were like 2 or 3 and like don't really remember what it was like to be a family, like all together. They might have some type of feelings like when they're at school because they see their friends and they have 2, married parents. And so they might feel some way about that, even though they never really like can't remember experiencing that. So I think if possible, like, make sure that you're both showing up to things so that they still have 2 parents there for support. It may look a little different. They're not exactly together, but my mom and my dad are here. Now, like, obviously, if you live in like different states or whatnot, that's not an option. But if you can make it work, like to show them that even though we chose not to be together anymore, we're still choosing to be with you.
Right. Absolutely. And showing up. And I like when you highlighted, I want to kind of talk further on, like, if you live in like a different state, communication in that relationship is even more so important, right? I mean, thankfully, like, we are in the era of technology.
Yes.
And so you can video chat or FaceTime. And I think that will be really
We
helpful.
have a lot of parents. I actually have one who his dad lives in a different state and we'll Zoom his dad into therapy sessions, like whenever we're working on a new concept, so that like mom will be in the room and then we'll Zoom dad in so that when he sees his dad or talks to his dad on the phone or whatnot, his dad knows what he's talking about because he was also in the therapy session through Zoom.
Yeah. No, I think that's important. It really is important to show up for your kids. Like, it's important to, like, because this topic is like how to help children adjust to separation or divorce, right? That's not just about like talking to them about it. That's not just about giving them support tools, whether that's like tangible journals or creating like a calming corner for them, like a safe space in their new room, or setting them up with a therapist or setting them up with a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but for 3, it really does like mean looking at compromise with your children so that they can have consistency almost in both of the household, and still have like a major part of life as they once knew it, right? So that is like pretty much the same for them, because kids do best when like parents remain and promote that like consistency
and support. I think it's good to show our kids that in order to get support, that doesn't mean that the person has to live in your home.
Right.
Therapists don't live in your home. Doctors don't live in your home. Teachers don't live in your home. Coaches don't live in your home. Friends don't live in your home. But those are all people that can still give you support
in some capacity.
Right. So just because one parent isn't living in your home per se doesn't mean that they're not there for you.
Yeah. And you can show up in different ways. You just have to be, again, really consistent. And just piggybacking off of previous videos, like when you say you're going to show up to something, definitely show up to it. I do want to kind of like touch on that in this video as far as like separation or divorce. Like, a lot of parents would say like, oh yeah, like I'm going to show up to your game. And then they accidentally forget, but then that becomes like a habit or anything of that nature. And then that can create a lot of distance between that child and that parent, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I do think too, just being realistic with what you're committing to with your child as the parent, right? And just making sure that what you commit to is realistic for you and for your child as well. What do I mean by that again? Like communication. If you have a child who's like in high school and has all of these commitments, maybe like a part-time job, and doing a sport and doing volunteer hours and is like in this rigorous like academic, you know, program, or like does dual enrollment, so it's like on the college campus as well, and like doing all of these things, it's really hard to say like, oh, we're going to talk for an hour every single day, right? Sometimes that's not realistic and sometimes that's not feasible. But being intentional and saying, whether you're like 5 minutes down the road, or if you're like across country in a different time zone, I think being intentional with your child as well, not just showing up, but being intentional as far as like, I'm going to plan this for you because you mean something to me, not just always like it being spontaneous, right? I think it being planned out, being executed kind of like with that intention shows, that you care, and shows that you can be present and be involved and be supported as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different ways to support your child going through like a separation or a divorce.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think if there's like really anything else.
Not really anything I can think of at the moment. Just again, I just want to like takeaways. There's no one size fits all way to talk to your kids about separation or divorce or how to handle it, or what works for your family is just like when you were together, like is different than what works for other families.
Mm-hmm.
And just keeping those like lines of communication open between your child and yourself and both parents, and showing up. I think if you do that and you're consistent with that, it's going to definitely be hard at first, but a lot of growth and it can happen, and just like new things can come from it in good ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like, it is a rough situation in like a really hard circumstance, but even we create a video about setbacks and things of that nature. And even when life has its own setbacks, right? Like we could still overcome that. And I think that is a huge narrative that parents should foster as their
what
children
can we learn
going,
from this?
Yes, going through this as well, right? And so with that, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with us on Air with B&B. Remember that your mental health matters, and we'll see you in the next video.
See you later.